Before we dive into tonight's story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you had to rate your love for Courage the Cowardly Dog, from 1 to 10, what would you give him? Not for the scares, not for the laughs, but for the way he loved, protected, and never gave up, even when he was shaking in his little pink paws. Drop your number in the comments below. Let's see just how much love this small, scared dog has brought into our lives. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let's keep growing this cozy little family, one soft story at a time. Tonight we're covering the regrets of Courage, the moments that broke his heart, the things he wishes he could change, and the love that carried him through it all. The wind had gone quiet in nowhere. Not a howl, not a hum, just stillness, the kind that makes the walls sigh. Inside the old farmhouse, a flickering lamp danced with dust. The only sound was the crackle of a television left on, casting silent static across the room. Courage sat on the worn rug, paws tucked beneath his belly, eyes soft and distant. He wasn't watching the TV. He was watching memory. Suddenly, a noise. Wimp. It was faint, like the house had exhaled something it had kept hidden for years. Courage's ears perked up. He sniffed, turned his head. The sound had come from under the couch. Slowly, he crawled forward, little claws tapping on wood. He lifted the couch skirt with a cautious paw, and there it was, a small photo, worn at the corners, curled at the edges. Two dogs, smiling, standing tall in front of a red and yellow circus tent. His breath caught. Manoon, he touched the picture, and the moment his paw grazed the paper, the TV flickered, the static twisted, and from the screen, a shape began to form. A rocket, long and pointed, steam coiling from its base, a cage inside, two faces looking out, a younger Courage, banging on glass. The screen crackled and buzzed, and then it all faded. Just Courage, the couch, the photo, and a stillness that wrapped around his heart. He sat there a long time, the photo in front of him, eyes glassy. Then, very slowly, he curled up beside it, letting the glow of the TV bathe him in memories. The room faded around him. The photo blurred. The wind outside whispered his name, and Courage began to dream. Dream of white hallways, of barking, of steam, of the moment his heart cracked, and the rocket left the earth. The wind shifts, and we drift now into Courage's dream. The floor beneath him becomes tile, cold, smooth, echoing. A pale hallway stretches endlessly in both directions, sterile and quiet, lit only by humming fluorescent lights that flicker without rhythm. The walls are lined with cages, each one empty, each one open, but they groan, as if recently disturbed. Courage walks slowly. His paw steps patter against the tile. There's no sound but his breathing, and the low hum, growing louder. He rounds a corner, and there it is, the launch room, stark white, metal glinting, cables snaking across the floor like veins, and in the center, the rocket. It towers upward, reaching for the ceiling. Steam escapes its seams in slow hisses, like exhaled regret. Red warning lights blink, casting fleeting shadows on the walls. The room is too large, too bright, too still, and yet behind a pane of thick glass, two shapes, fur, eyes, familiar, two dogs, pressed together inside a cage bolted to the rocket's core. A mother, a father. Courage moves closer, but the glass is thick and unmoving. A siren begins to sound, slow, distant, mournful. A voice echoes in the distance, distorted, mechanical, emotionless. Words fade before they're understood. Steam hisses harder now. The rocket begins to shudder. Courage places a paw against the glass. A heartbeat. The rocket lifts, first gently, then with a force that makes the room tremble. The glow beneath it expands, filling the space with white-hot sorrow, and in a flash of light, they're gone. The room empties. The silence returns, but the emptiness stays behind. Back in bed, Courage stirs. His paws twitch gently. His face, once calm, tightens into a quiet, trembling frown. His heart aches inside his chest. Even in sleep, no cries, no sounds, just the gentle pull of a memory too large for words. The house creaks, and still, the dream holds him close, Morning seeps into nowhere like honey. Slow, golden, and quiet. The wind is stilled. Sunlight peeks through the dusty curtains, settling softly over the wooden floorboards of the farmhouse. The old clock ticks with sleepy rhythm, but courage does not rise. He lies in bed motionless, curled tightly into himself, not from fear, but from weight. A heavy, invisible ache pressing into his little chest. Downstairs, pans clang. A radio murmurs. Eustace grumbles, but none of it reaches him. He stays tucked away, eyes half open, but seeing nothing. The door creaks open. Slow footsteps, slippers on wood. A gentle shape enters the room. She doesn't speak. She doesn't ask. She just sits beside him. The edge of the mattress dips slightly. She hums low, soft and familiar. A tune from long ago, when she first found him shivering by the garbage can in the rain. Her hand brushes gently through his fur. Slow and steady, over and over. Each stroke pulls a memory forward, not of rockets or loss, but of safety, warmth, a scent like biscuits and lavender soap. He doesn't move, but something shifts within. Her presence becomes the quiet between thunderclaps, the hush between heartbeats. She reaches down and tucks the corner of the blanket under his paw. Then she stays, not to fix, not to ask, just to be. Time passes unnoticed. The house breathes, and courage rests, not because the sadness has gone, but because he doesn't have to hold it alone anymore. Later, when she rises, he feels the cool air replace her warmth, but not her comfort. She leaves something behind, a reminder, a tether, love without condition, presence without pressure. And on the floor, still undisturbed, the photo of his parents catches the morning light. It glows faintly, like memory exhaling. Outside, the wind picks up again, soft this time, guiding. Courage turns his head toward the window, and for the first time that day, he moves. The day leans into afternoon. The sun climbs high, but its warmth feels distant, like it's shining on a world slightly tilted. Courage steps outside, the photo gently held in his mouth. The wind brushes his ears. Not cold, not warm, just familiar, like a voice without words. He walks, past the fence, past the broken windmill, past the mailbox that hasn't held a letter in years. Each step echoes through the empty plains of nowhere. Dry grass sways in slow waves. The sky is wide and watching. His paws find the old path, one he hasn't taken since he was smaller, softer. Before the wait, hours pass like whispers, and then he sees it. The veterinarian's office, collapsed, ruined. The building sags into the earth, like a memory too heavy to hold itself up. Its walls are cracked, its roof half-caved. Vines stretch across shattered windows like time trying to erase what happened inside. But the door still stands, crooked, uninviting, waiting. Courage steps inside. Dust stirs. The air smells of metal and antiseptic. Even after all these years, as if the past never stopped breathing here. The hallway is dim, familiar. He passes cages, rusted, empty. Some still open, claw marks on the inside. One of them is his. He stops, looks at it, then moves on. At the end of the hallway, he reaches the launch room. The walls are covered in ivy now. Panels flicker with dying light, but the platform remains. Circular, metal, scorched black in places. The rocket is gone, but its shadow still stains the floor. He steps onto the pad. The moment his paw touches the center, a quiet click sounds beneath him, and then a flicker. A console embedded in the wall lights up. Red letters blink. Transfer incomplete. A soft humming begins. The screen pulses once, then words appear. Would you like to continue? Courage stands still, his breath shallow. He stares at the screen, and for the first time in a long time, he doesn't know what to do. The light from the console reflects in his eyes. It flickers gently, waiting, but there's no rush, just the silence of vines, dust and old machines, holding their breath. He slowly steps back from the panel, not pressing the button, not running from it, just letting it be. Outside, the wind has shifted again. It hums through the cracks in the walls, carrying the scent of stars, and somewhere in the sky above, something long lost continues to orbit, unseen, but never forgotten. Night spills gently over nowhere. The sky, once pale and endless, is now a velvet sea, deep, dark, and full of watching stars. Courage lies on the cracked platform behind the ruined vet's office. The grasses whisper around him. The old console glows faintly beside him. Its screen is gone still. He stares up, past the shadows, past the clouds, into the great unknown. The stars shimmer distant and quiet. One flickers a little brighter than the others, and Courage watches it. He watches and waits for something. Above him, the stars begin to move, not fast, not sharp, but slow and circular. Like thoughts he's turned over 1,000 times. He blinks, and when his eyes open again, he is somewhere else. The grass beneath him is green, soft, lush. There's no platform, no console, no cold, just a warm field, a breeze that smells like bread and bark and summer. And in the distance, 2 figures, running, playing. A bark, a nuzzle, a laugh that echoes like wind chimes. Courage watches. His paws press into the grass. His heart swells. They turn, and he sees them. His parents. They are not trapped. They are not afraid. They are simply free, alive in this dream space. Whole. They don't speak. They don't need to. They look at him with eyes full of love, not regret. And Courage, for the first time, doesn't chase, doesn't cry, doesn't panic. He just stands there and lets the moment hold him. The sky above them turns lavender, then gold, then indigo. His mother lifts her head to the wind. His father nudges Courage's shoulder. They begin to walk away. Not fleeing, not vanishing, but fading like music at the end of a song. Courage doesn't follow, but he doesn't feel left behind, because this time, he knows, they were never angry. They never blamed him. They knew he was small and scared, and still tried. They knew he loved them, and that love was enough. He wakes on the launch pad, back in the quiet night. The stars are still there. One still flickers brighter than the rest, but now, it doesn't feel so far away. The wind moves gently around him, and Courage, small and silent, watches the sky until the first hints of dawn begin to bloom. Morning returns slowly to nowhere. The stars retreat behind soft clouds. The sky turns a pale shade of peach and gray, as though the world itself has taken a long breath. Courage walks home across the fields. His paws move with ease. Not fast, not urgent, but steady, like a heart that has finally stopped racing. The old photograph is cradled gently in his mouth. The farmhouse appears on the horizon, bathed in the hush of early light. The windows glow faintly. Smoke curls from the chimney. Somewhere inside, a kettle hums and wood creaks with the waking of a home. Inside the living room, Courage sets the photograph on the mantel. He takes his time, straightens it slightly, and steps back. In the dim light, the image seems different now. Not frozen in loss, but glowing with love. His parents smile out at him. No longer distant, no longer unreachable. And he smiles back. The house is quiet. Eustace snores in the recliner, his hat tilted over his eyes. One of his boots rests sideways on the floor. From the kitchen, the scent of toast drifts into the room. And then, soft footsteps. Muriel. She says nothing. She doesn't have to. She places a blanket around Courage's shoulders, then joins him on the front porch. They sit together, she in her rocking chair, Courage at her feet. The world is still, not because everything is fixed, but because for the first time, he doesn't feel broken. The wind lifts gently across the prairie. The fields sway. The sky begins to warm, and Courage rests his head against the wooden porch post, his eyes half closed. He breathes in the moment, fully, quietly, and lets himself relax. Not as a hero, not as a protector, just as a dog, loved, remembered, at peace. The screen fades slowly to black. A star twinkles once in the corner, and then, silence, only the sound of wind, and the soft beating of a heart, finally at ease. Night has wrapped itself gently around the farmhouse. In nowhere. Outside, the wind is still. The crickets hum their slow, sleepy song, beneath a sky filled with tired stars. Inside, the house breathes softly. The television glows with pale blue light, casting silent flickers across the wooden floor. Courage sits alone by the window. His eyes are wide, not with fear, but with thought. A moth taps quietly against the glass. The clock ticks in the background, and somewhere down the hall, a warm voice hums a lullaby behind a bedroom door. Muriel. Courage lowers his head onto the windowsill. He blinks slowly, and a memory begins to surface. Not loud, not sudden, just present. A day, a moment, 100 moments. Muriel in the garden, smiling as she plants daffodils. Eustace on the porch, chewing his pipe, muttering under his breath. And Courage, wanting to say something. To tell her, thank you. To tell him, please stop. To tell them, I love you both. But when he opens his mouth, only a bark, a sputter, a squeal. Not the words he meant, not the sounds they'd understand. Just panic, just noise. He remembers Muriel tilting her head kindly. What is it, dear? He remembers Eustace frowning. You dumb dog. He remembers the moment passing, like it always does. Like they all do. Now in the quiet of night, Courage shifts beneath the window. The silence presses against his chest like weight. He pulls out an old notepad. He tries to draw what he feels. A heart, a house, 2 hands holding a paw. But it's messy, unclear. Just like his voice. He sighs. Not out loud, but deep and inward. From the hallway, Muriel's door opens softly. She passes by, not seeing him in the dark. But she pauses. She places a teacup on the table, filled with warm milk, then walks away. Courage looks at the cup, then at the door she disappeared behind. And he wishes just once he could say, thank you for loving me. But the words never come out. He sips the milk. The night deepens, and the photo on the wall, Muriel, Eustace, and him between them, seems to shimmer slightly in the TV glow. Courage curls up beneath the window, the notepad still beside him. Outside the moth still taps. Inside the silence stays soft, and Courage slowly drifts to sleep, with a heart full of unsaid things. The dream does not begin with darkness. It begins with sound. Muffled, jumbled, broken, like a voice underwater. A bark, distorted, a whisper lost in wind. Courage stands in a vast, blank field. No walls, no ceiling, no end. He tries to call out, to say help, to say they're in danger. But every word melts into barking. Every attempt turns to noise. The field responds. Shapes begin to form. Swirling clouds that resemble moments. Muriel, holding a cup of tea near the edge of a cliff, unaware of the creature behind her. Eustace, repairing the tractor with something watching him from the barn. And Courage, running toward them. He barks, screeches, waves his paws. But they don't see him. Or they look and blink confused. He tries again. Harder. The noise grows louder, but not clearer. The shapes blur. The wind rises. Suddenly he's inside the farmhouse again. Lightning cracks across the sky outside. The walls shake with tension. Something is coming. Courage rushes from room to room, pointing, yelping, shaking the old lamp, flipping open the floorboards. He draws pictures on scraps of paper. He grabs a tape recorder, presses play, fast forwards, rewinds. None of it works. He tries again, and again. His feet slip. His voice cracks. His heart pounds. They don't understand. They never understand. The storm grows. The floor rattles. Muriel stares out the window. Eustace rocks in his chair. The danger gets closer. And Courage, still barking, still pointing, still screaming without words, grows smaller. He shrinks, little by little, with each passing moment, until he's just a flicker in the corner of the room. A sound no louder than the wind. Then silence. The storm halts. The dream pauses. Everything stands still, and into that stillness, a new feeling drifts in. Not fear, not frustration, just sadness. Soft, heavy. Courage sits down, and in the stillness of the dream he doesn't try to warn. or explain, or bark. He just lets the quiet hold him, letting his heart speak the things his mouth never could. When he wakes, the farmhouse is calm, but a fog clings to the corners of the room, and in the distance thunder rolls faintly, waiting for its return. Morning rises slowly over. Nowhere, not with brightness, but with hush. Clouds blanket the sky, casting everything in a pale, gentle light. The wind doesn't blow. It listens, and inside the farmhouse, time moves quietly. Courage wakes beneath the window. The blanket from last night has fallen halfway off. The notepad lies at his side. The drawings faded in the dim light. He doesn't move for a while, just breathes. The fog in his chest has not lifted, only settled. In the kitchen, the sounds of breakfast echo gently. Plates, a kettle, the soft clinking of a spoon. But Courage stays where he is. Not because he's tired, but because something inside him feels fragile. Not broken, just untouchable. After some time, Muriel steps into the room. She carries a small tray, toast, eggs, and a saucer of warm milk. She places it on the table without a word. Then she notices the notepad. She picks it up gently, studies the sketches. Rough, simple, crooked, but honest. A heart, two hands, a small dog between two tall figures, standing in the shape of a house. Muriel doesn't speak, but she sits beside him on the floor. Not on the chair, not above him, beside him. She holds the notepad in her lap, and nods slowly. She doesn't need the pictures explained. She sees what they mean. She sees him. Outside, the wind stirs just slightly. The clouds begin to thin. Courage leans his head against her leg. She reaches down, brushing her fingers behind his ear, the way she always does. But this time, she lingers longer. Her hand stays, and nothing else is said. The moment hangs in the room like soft fabric. It doesn't try to be anything. It just is. Warm, present, unspoken. In the corner, Eustace passes by, muttering, grumbling, scratching his shoulder. He sees them, stops, then keeps walking. But something in his step is slower, quieter, as if even he too can feel the stillness. The day passes like a cloud. No storm, no monsters, no chaos. Just an ordinary Tuesday in nowhere. And for once Courage lets it be. He doesn't bark. He doesn't bros. He just is, with her. Evening settles quietly. But something is different. The wind has returned. Not harsh, not angry, but uneasy. It carries a weight, invisible, but growing. Courage sits by the back door. The notepad remains on, the drawings untouched. Muriel knits softly in her chair. Eustace is napping, his feet propped on a stool, hat over his eyes. The sky begins to darken early. Clouds gather without color. The air thickens. Something is coming. Courage stands. His ears perk. The silence in the walls shifts, like breath being held too long. He paces to the window, looks out across the field. Nothing yet, but his heart beats faster. He knows. A flicker on the horizon. Not lightning. Something else. A pulse. A shimmer of something moving. Crawling, stretching across the prairie in silence. Courage runs to Muriel. He tries to warn her. He paws at her knee. Points to the door. Her eyes widen slightly. But she doesn't see the threat yet. Only the worry in his face. She places a hand on his head, and smiles softly. A gesture of trust. Not understanding. He rushes to Eustace, tugs his coat, points out the window. Eustace groans, opens one eye, and waves him off, back to sleep. Courage runs to the window. Again, the shimmer has become a shape. Tall, jagged, floating. No legs, no eyes, just outlines in movement. A storm given form. It doesn't roar. It doesn't shout. It simply approaches. Courage grabs anything he can. A pencil, the notepad, a broken flashlight. He draws frantic pictures. A figure looming, a house splitting, 2 shadows behind him. He holds it up to Muriel. She squints. Her eyes soften. But she doesn't see what he sees. Not fast enough. Not clearly. The moment is passing. A sudden gust. The windows rattle. The lights flicker. The shimmer reaches the yard. The screen door flies open. With no sound. No wind enters. Only a coldness. A pressure. Muriel stands slowly. Eustace follows. Grumbling but alert. The storm enters. Not as rain, but as distortion. The air around them ripples. Courage places himself between them and he bares his teeth. Not in anger, but in desperation. He tries again. One last time. To say I see it. You don't. But I'll protect you anyway. But the words never form. Only that familiar bark. High-pitched. Strained. Small. But it is enough. The storm pauses. It hovers. Then shifts. Like a thought unfinished. It turns. Folds inward. And recedes. Back into the prairie. Back into the nothing. The house breathes again. Muriel kneels down. Touches his cheek. Eustace mumbles something softer than usual. And Courage sits. Shaking. Not from fear. But from the weight of almost not being enough. But he was. Even without words. He was. The storm has passed. The house no longer shivers. The windows no longer flicker. But the stillness that follows is not peace. Not yet. It's something deeper. Something like after. Courage lies beneath the table, curled in a tight crescent, his breathing slow. Muriel sleeps in her chair. A blanket rests over her lap. Eustace snores on the couch, his hat tilted. One boot still off. The clock ticks softly. The wind has wandered away. In the quiet, Courage opens his eyes. He looks around, slowly. Not with fear, but with thought. He rises, pads through the living room, careful not to wake them, and stands once more at the window. The prairie is calm. No shimmer, no shadows, just the gentle sway of tall grass in the moonlight. He pulls the notepad from the table, sits on the rug, and begins again. This time, not to warn, not to prepare, but simply to say something. A sun, 2 chairs, the bowl on the floor, a record player, the heart, a smaller figure curled up at the feet of a larger one, not drawn with precision, but with feeling. He fills the page slowly, and as he draws, something shifts inside him. The ache in his chest doesn't vanish, but it becomes warmer, less sharp, less alone. The room stays silent, but Courage hears something. Not from outside, not from behind, from within. It isn't a bark, it isn't a word. It's not loud, but it's clear. A voice, his own, not in sound, but in feeling. And it says, they know. Even if I never say it, even if it never comes out right, they know. He closes the notepad, places it gently beneath the chair, where Muriel sleeps, then climbs up beside her. She shifts just slightly, but does not wake. Her hand, without opening her eyes, finds its way to his back, and rests there. Courage closes his eyes. The silence doesn't press against him anymore. It wraps around him, not as a wall, but as a voice he never needed to speak. Morning comes softly to nowhere, not as a burst of light, but as a slow blooming. A quiet glow spills into the farmhouse, filling corners with warmth. Dust drifts lazily in the sunbeams. The air is still, safe. Courage wakes on the chair beside Muriel. She still sleeps, a faint smile on her lips. Her hand, now limp, rests where it had gently held him through the night. He stretches, slowly, without hurry, and moves across the room. On the table the notepad waits. He flips it open, looks at the final page. There's nothing new drawn, but he stares at it for a long time, then carefully tears it out, and places it by Muriel's teacup. The drawing is crooked, the pencil lines soft, but the meaning is clear. 2 hands, 1 paw, 3 hearts, together. Eustace grumbles from the hall, dragging his boots, yawning louder than he needs to. He enters the room, scratching his chin, his eyes still half closed. He sees Courage, then notices the paper. He doesn't comment, just shuffles over to the window and peers outside. The wind brushes against the screen. Soft, empty, familiar. Courage walks outside. The front porch is cool beneath his paws. The prairie stretches before him, quiet and golden. Nothing looms. No danger today. Just peace. He sits at the top of the steps. The breeze passes gently through his fur. He closes his eyes, breathes in and out. He doesn't try to speak, doesn't bark, doesn't draw. There's no need to explain anything this morning, because some things were never meant to be heard. Only felt, only known. Behind him, Muriel steps outside. She says nothing. She just sits beside him and places a fresh bowl of milk by his side. Courage looks up. Their eyes meet. Nothing is said. Everything is understood. The world exhales. The morning unfolds. And Courage, small, quiet, trembling, is no longer afraid of the words he cannot say. Because now he knows. They were never missing. They were always there. Night has folded itself over the farmhouse once again. The moon is pale and wide, watching from above with soft, distant eyes. The wind rustles low through the fields, brushing past tired trees and fence posts, whispering secrets no one hears. Inside the house all is still. A lamp flickers faintly in the living room. The TV, long forgotten, hums with a low static. Courage sits alone in the kitchen doorway. His eyes are on the table, but he sees something else. He sees a memory, the soft clang of a teacup hitting the floor. The sound was small, but the moment was not. He remembers it clearly. Muriel, reaching for the kettle, a shadow flickering behind her, a cursed wind slipping through the cracks in the wall, a strange glint in the sugar jar. And him, Courage, seeing it all a second too late. He barked. He ran, but the moment passed him. The spell struck. The teacup fell. And Muriel, his Muriel, was not herself anymore. He got her back.
He always did.
But the image stayed. The sound of the cup, the look in her eyes not recognizing him, the helpless ache in his chest, because even one moment of her pain was too much. Now he sits at the kitchen threshold. The kettle whistles in the background, faint and tired. Muriel is asleep. Eustace snoring in the other room. But Courage does not sleep.
He watches the table.
The chair, the empty teacup now set neatly on a saucer. It did not fall tonight, but it once did, and once was enough. He lowers his head onto his paws. The moonlight drips through the window. A distant owl calls. The TV flickers, and somewhere inside, the memory plays again, silent and endless.
He doesn't cry.
He doesn't move. He simply lays there, listening to the teacup that fell. The dream begins in the garden. The sky above is overcast, painted in shades of soft gray. The sun is somewhere behind it, quiet, hidden. Courage walks slowly between the rows of cabbages and flowers, but the colors feel faded, like something once beautiful now distant. Ahead of him, Muriel. She hums gently to herself, kneeling in the dirt. She reaches forward to pluck a weed, then pauses, her hand hovering near her side. She winces, just a flicker, a small instinctive motion, then continues, without a word. Courage sees it. That flicker, that moment, the way she shifted ever so slightly, the way she pressed her palm against her ribs for a breath, and moved on.
He walks to her slowly,
Eyes wide with concern.
She smiles when she sees him. He paws his head.
Keeps humming, but Courage lingers, and the memory sharpens. A week ago, a wind that wasn't natural, a door that slammed when no one touched it. Muriel, knocked sideways, landing hard against the cupboard. She had smiled, laughed it off.
It's nothing, dear.
But Courage had seen the bruise bloom along her side later that night. Dark, quiet, blooming beneath her soft sweater. She forgot, or chose not to hold it, but he remembered. Now in the dream, the garden begins to fade. The cabbages wilt. The sky darkens. The soil beneath him softens, as if turning to mist. And Muriel, still kneeling, still smiling, begins to blur around the edges. Like memory, like guilt, courage runs forward.
He tries to hold her hand.
But his paw passes through, like smoke, like something already lost. The wind picks up, not loud, but steady.
It carries whispers he can't quite understand, his own voice among them.
A bark, a cry, a silent why. He wakes with a start. Back in the living room, Muriel snores softly in her chair. The bruise is long gone, but he remembers it. The way she flinched, the way he froze, the moment he wasn't fast enough. He curls against the base of her chair and listens to her breathing. The house is quiet, but inside Courage the echo remains, of a pain she forgot, and a heart that never did.
Evening once again folds over the farmhouse.
It arrives not with thunder, but with a hush. The wind has stilled. The sky is cloudless, yet dark, as if the stars themselves are holding back their light. Inside, a lamp glows faintly in the corner of the bedroom. Muriel is settling in for the night. Eustace mumbles from under his blanket, already halfway to sleep. Courage waits in the hallway, his silhouette quiet, against the wall.
He doesn't want to sleep.
Not yet, because tonight feels like that night. The one he still dreams about. The one he always returns to. The floor creaks as he moves toward the door. The lamp flickers once, and suddenly he's back there. Not tonight. Not now. But then, a wind had howled. The sky had turned green. A strange, twisted storm cloud overhead, swirling without sound. The farmhouse had groaned with pressure, and something had gotten inside. Not a monster, not a ghost, but something worse. A force that couldn't be seen, only felt.
It moved through the walls,
Knocked over chairs, blew open doors, and in the middle of it, Muriel had stumbled. Just one step, one slip. She reached for the banister.
He reached for her. It too late. She fell.
Only a few stairs, only a few seconds, but enough. Enough to make Courage's world stop. He remembers her cry,
Short,
startled,
in the silence that followed. He remembers cradling her gently.
while Eustace fumbled to call the doctor, grumbling and afraid.
She had been okay.
Eventually, no broken bones, just bruises, and rest, and a smile the next morning. Just a silly fall, she had said. But Courage knew it wasn't, because he hadn't caught her. He had been just one breath too slow. Now in the quiet hallway, Courage sits. The lamp still glows. Muriel turns over in bed, mumbling softly in her sleep.
He walks into the room, careful, silent.
He pulls the blanket gently over her shoulder, then curls up at the foot of the bed.
He stares at the floor where it happened.
And the silence there feels thick, like time hasn't quite moved on. But Muriel's breath is steady. The window is still, and Courage, watching over her, feels something settle in his chest. Not peace, but presence.
He couldn't catch her then.
But he is here now, and tonight, that is enough. The wind has picked up again, not violently, but with purpose.
It moves through nowhere, like an old song.
Familiar, haunting, unfinished. The farmhouse creaks under its weight, and deep inside, the shadows flicker. Courage stands in the parlor. He's holding an old photograph between his teeth,
He faded.
and wrinkled from years of being clutched too tightly. Muriel, smiling beside the kitchen stove, her apron crooked, her glasses slipping down her nose. She looked at him that day, really looked, with eyes that saw through storms, that softened even his worst fear. But in the memory rising now, her eyes go missing, not literally, but slowly. The dream begins again.
He's back in the hallway.
The door creaks open, and Muriel stands there. But something is wrong. Her posture is still, too still. Her hands hang at her sides. Her head tilts, and her eyes, soft brown, full of kindness, are blank, wide, glassy, empty of recognition. The spell had taken her, not with a flash, not with a roar, but with silence.
She looked at Courage.
As though he were a stranger, a creature, a shadow in her home.
He had tried everything.
Barked,
Cried.
drawn pictures, played her favorite music, But she only blinked, turned away, walked past him. The dream brings it all back in perfect, agonizing clarity. Each moment a replay, each failure sharpened. He follows her through the dream house, room to room,
each space more warped
than the last. Key paintings melting, doors shrinking, mirrors reflecting nothing. But still he tries, over and over, to bring her back. And then, in the center of the house, she pauses, looks at him again. Her head tilts, once more, and just before she disappears into the wall of fog behind her, her eyes soften, just slightly.
He wakes.
The photograph still beside him. The house is quiet. No spells, no shadows, only the ticking of a slow clock, and the soft creak of Muriel's rocker in the other room. He walks to her. She's asleep again. Her glasses slightly askew. Courage climbs into her lap, listens to her breathing, and watches her face, not in fear, but in gratitude, because now, her eyes are hers again, and they still see him, even in sleep. The wind is gone now. The night is thick and still, like velvet draped across the sky. Courage lies on the floor beside the fireplace. The flames are low, barely more than glowing coals. The warmth flickers across his fur as his breathing slows. And then, the dream begins. This one is different. It does not start in the house. It starts in a field, vast, endless, pale blue under a dark, quiet sky. Courage walks alone. No stars, no wind, only silence. Then, a shape, far ahead, familiar. Muriel. She stands at the edge of something he can't see. A horizon, a mist, a line between now and never. He begins to run. His paws press into the soft grass. His heart thumps in his chest. She turns. She sees him. She smiles. He's close now. Just a few steps more. But then, she begins to fade. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but softly, like breath in cold air, like steam on glass, like the memory of a voice you almost remember. Courage stops, frozen. She looks at him one last time. Her lips move, no sound, but the shape of her words is clear. It's not your fault. And then, she's gone. The field vanishes too, replaced by darkness. Total, still, soundless. Courage floats in it. Small, pink, shivering. There is no wind here, no farmhouse, no Muriel, only space, and regret, and the unbearable fear that maybe, one day, she really will vanish, and he won't be fast enough, won't be strong enough, won't be enough. The darkness begins to fall away. He stirs, wakes, back on the rug, before the fire. The coals have gone out, but light begins to gather at the edges of the room. A gray morning, a new day. Muriel's footsteps echo from the hallway, soft, barefoot. She hums a tune he's heard 1,000 times. She doesn't know the dream he just had, but she walks past him, and gently touzles his ears on the way. He blinks, tears gather in his eyes, but he lets them fall silently. She's here, not gone, not yet. He follows her into the kitchen, just to be near, because for all his barking, saving, fighting, sometimes, love is just presence, just staying close, just holding her in dreams, and in waking. Morning light seeps slowly into the farmhouse. It doesn't rush. It arrives like a whisper, pale and golden, spilling gently across the walls, floor, and furniture. The house is still, but it is not silent. There is the soft sound of toast popping from the toaster, the gentle hiss of water, warming on the stove, and Muriel's quiet humming, barely louder than breath. Courage lies beneath the table. He's not asleep. He's not fully awake either. Just resting, drifting in the in-between space, where dreams still linger, where the memory of the night clings like fog around his thoughts. He stretches, then rises, pads softly into the kitchen. Muriel is there, back turned, stirring her tea. She hums the same tune she always hums when the day begins just right. She turns, smiles, and sets a saucer of milk on the floor beside her. Courage doesn't drink it right away. He just watches her, every motion, every blink, every time she hums, and forgets the words halfway through. And he thinks, if he could protect her from everything, if he could place a shield over the world, catch every curse, every shadow, every falling cup. He would, but he knows now. He can't. Even he, the little dog who's faced monsters, ghosts, aliens, and shadows, can't stop everything. Sometimes she gets hurt. Sometimes he's too slow. Sometimes she might vanish. But in this moment, she is here, whole, warm, and smiling down at him like he's her entire world. He drinks the milk, then climbs gently into her lap. She strokes his back. He closes his eyes. Outside, the wind stirs gently through the grass. A new day begins, and courage lets go. Just a little of the regret that clings so tightly, not because the pain isn't real, but because love remains, even in the hurt, even in the moments he couldn't stop, even in the silence that followed the fall. He rests against her chest. Her hand rests on his back. The world feels soft, and for now, safe. Night settles over nowhere like dust on an old book. The wind is gentle, barely brushing the curtains. The moon hangs in the sky like a slow breath, quiet and pale. Inside the farmhouse, all is calm, but courage cannot sleep. He sits at the top of the stairs, ears drooped, tail curled tightly around his paws. The house is still. Eustace snores from the living room. Muriel hums faintly in her dreams. And yet, courage feels unsettled. Not by noise, not by shadow, but by memory. A specific one. Short, small, but heavy. The stairs creak beneath him as he lies down slowly. And the moment returns. A bright flash. A figure in the doorway. A curse whispered into the wind. Muriel. In the kitchen. Unaware. And him. Frozen. Only for a second. But it was enough. A second where his legs wouldn't move. His voice caught. His paws curled into the floor. The world slowed. But not for long. By the time he ran, the spell had hit. The harm had begun. She was okay. Later. Like always. But he remembers that second more than anything. The hesitation. The pause. The silence before the bark. Now in the hush of night. Courage rests his head on the stair rail. The room darkens further. The shadows deepen. And in his heart, the question stirs again. What if I had moved sooner? Would it have changed everything? He curls tighter, as if wrapping himself around the moment. Might undo it. But it never does. The clock ticks. The wind hushes. The night deepens. And courage drifts into sleep, carrying with him the weight of a single second. A second he can't ever take back. The dream begins in mid-step. Courage runs. His paws strike the ground, soft and fast. But the world around him moves slower. The grass beneath him stretches endlessly. The sky above washed in gray. Ahead, Muriel walks towards something she can't see. A doorway. A light. A figure waiting inside. She doesn't hear the warning in the wind. She doesn't see what waits beyond. Courage barks. His mouth is wide, but the sound is swallowed by the dream. He pushes harder, runs faster. But suddenly, he stops. Not from choice, but from fear. The path beneath him splinters. The light ahead twists. A shadow forms at the edge of his vision. And just for a second, courage freezes. His legs stiffen. His tail tucks. His breath catches in his throat. The moment passes. He runs again. But the door has already closed. He wakes suddenly, heart racing, breath short. The farmhouse is quiet. The dawn has not yet come. But the feeling in his chest remains. Tight, trembling, heavy. He walks to the window. Outside, the prairie sleeps beneath a dark sky. No monsters. No shadows. No doors. Just moonlight brushing the wheat. But courage can still feel the moment inside him. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a fall. It wasn't even something large. Just a pause. A second of stillness. A flicker of fear. And the world moved without him. He curls up in the window seat. Watches the horizon. Wonders how many other seconds like that there have been. Seconds that didn't wait. Seconds that changed everything. He rests his head against the pain. And lets the dream echo gently in his mind. Not to punish himself, but to remember. To try again. The wind has changed. It moves gently across the plains, stirring dry grass with a sound like soft pages turning. Inside the farmhouse, The day begins quietly. No chaos. No calls for help. Just Eustace muttering in his sleep, and Muriel singing faintly as she folds laundry. But Courage isn't near them. He's outside, alone beneath the porch steps, resting in the cool shadow. His eyes are on the horizon, but his thoughts are elsewhere. Another memory. One that surfaces slowly. Familiar. Painful. A forest. Dark. Thick. Whispering. Muriel's voice echoing from somewhere within. She had wandered just a bit too far while picking herbs for her stew, and Courage had followed, up to the edge of the trees. But when the shadows swirled and the air turned strange, he stopped, just for a second, just one step shy of the woods. A step he didn't take. He had gone in eventually, fought the illusion, found her, brought her back, wrapped in his trembling paws. She smiled the whole way home, didn't remember the eyes in the trees, didn't remember the fog that tried to take her. But he did, because there had been a second, a single heartbeat, where he froze, and he still wonders what might have happened had he stood there 1 second longer. Now beneath the porch, the shadows stretch and shift. The wind rustles the grass, carrying the faint scent of pine, and the silence asks again, "Why did you wait? Why didn't you move sooner?" Courage lowers his head, not in shame, not in fear, but in understanding, because he knows the truth now. Sometimes bravery doesn't feel like a roar. Sometimes it's a single step forward, and sometimes that step comes too late. Muriel calls softly from inside. He turns his ears toward her voice, rises slowly, climbs the steps, and walks back into the light. Not to forget, but to keep stepping, even when he's afraid. Evening returns like a soft sigh. The sky blushes faintly as the sun sinks behind the fields. The farmhouse is quiet again. Muriel knits in her rocker. Eustace sleeps in his chair, hat tilted forward, untouched newspaper across his lap. And Courage lies by the fireplace, eyes half open, breathing slow. But his thoughts are loud, not in noise, but in echo, an echo of something that almost happened, something that came close. He drifts into sleep, and the dream begins with stillness, then motion, then regret. He's standing at the top of the cellar stairs. Below he hears Muriel's voice, faint, worried, distant. The cellar door creaks open on its own. A chill rises from below, and something moves in the dark. Courage tries to step forward, but something inside holds him still. His body tenses. His breath catches. His paw hovers in the air. It's only for a second, but in that second, he imagines it all. Muriel trapped, taken, gone. He shouts into the dark, a bark, raw and urgent. And only then does he move. He races down the stairs, into the black. But when he reaches the bottom, there's no monster, no danger, just Muriel, standing in the corner, confused but unharmed. She had dropped her knitting, chased it down the steps, and called for help only because the light wouldn't turn on. He brings her back up gently, tail wagging in relief. But the fear lingers. Not of what was, but of what might have been. What could have happened if he'd waited just a second longer. He wakes by the fire. The room is dim now, the flames low, but Muriel is still there, beside him, knitting, humming, alive, safe. The echo fades, but the lesson stays. Even the almosts leave a mark. Even the things that didn't happen, almost did, and they still shape who he is. Courage curls up tighter, not in fear, but in quiet remembrance, because the echo of almost is a teacher. And tonight, he is still listening. Night deepens. The stars stretch quietly above nowhere, cold and far away. Clouds drift lazily across the sky like forgotten thoughts. Inside the farmhouse, all is still. Even the walls seem to breathe slower. Courage lies at the foot of Muriel's bed. She sleeps peacefully. Her breathing is calm, rising and falling like the sea. But Courage is awake. His eyes are open, his body still. And in that stillness, fear returns. Not as panic, not as noise, but as weight. Deep in his chest, low in his stomach, set into his bones. A feeling he knows too well. Not of monsters, not of claws or shadows, but of freezing, of knowing what to do, and being unable to do it. He remembers the hallway, the dim lamp, the moment Muriel reached for a door that should have stayed closed. He knew what was behind it. He felt it, but he didn't move, not right away, not fast enough. His heart pounded, his feet stuck, the sound of his own pulse louder than his bark. By the time he reached her, the door was already open, and something had slipped through. She had changed for days, not herself, not quite awake. He stayed by her side, day and night, whispering comfort she couldn't hear. She had returned. The spell faded. Her laughter came back, but courage never forgot the moment. The pause, the bone-deep fear. Now lying in the bedroom, courage shivers faintly, not from cold, but from remembering. His tail curls closer. His ears droop low. Muriel shifts in her sleep. Her hand slips from the blanket and falls gently across his back. Even in sleep, she finds him. Even when he says nothing, she knows. The weight doesn't vanish, but it lifts slightly, enough for him to close his eyes. Not fully, but enough. And in the darkness, with her touch steady and the wind quiet, he finds a kind of rest, not without fear. But beside it, dawn unfolds slowly across the prairie. The wind moves like a whisper across the golden fields. Inside the farmhouse, the light begins to stretch, soft and pale, spilling through the windows in long ribbons. The house is waking up, but courage is already awake. He sits on the front porch, still, but not stuck. Not today. He watches the horizon quietly. The sun begins to peek up, warming the land inch by inch. Birds call faintly in the distance. The air smells like dew and dust. Behind him, the door creaks open. Muriel steps out, wrapped in a shawl, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She doesn't say anything. She just sits beside him. They look out together. For a long moment, nothing moves, not even courage. But then, he breathes in, and leans his head gently against her arm. She rests her cheek on top of his. No words, just warmth. And in that moment, something inside him shifts. A quiet realization that fear will always be there. It will sit in his chest, in his paws, in the back of his throat. It will ask him to wait, to hide, to freeze. But he knows now. He can move anyway. He remembers all the times he didn't. All the seconds lost to hesitation. All the dreams that played them over and over again. But this morning, he doesn't look back. He just sits with her, and lets the warmth of the day rise. Eustace shuffles by the window inside, mumbling about eggs. The floorboards creak with the familiar rhythm of life. Nothing dangerous today. No monsters. No shadows. No rushing. Just stillness. And peace. Courage stands, pads quietly into the kitchen. Not to bark. Not to panic. Just to be near. To act. Softly. Gently. Bravely. Because even when fear sits in his bones, he can still move. And that too is courage. Night has fallen in nowhere. Not loud. Not wild. Just wide. The sky stretches endlessly above the house, filled with clouds that do not move. There is no rain. No lightning. Only pressure. Thick and heavy. Like something waiting to arrive. Inside the farmhouse, all is still. The lights are dim. The TV hums with soft static. Muriel has already gone to bed. Eustace snores faintly in his chair. And courage sits by the window. He doesn't bark, doesn't whimper, just watches the sky. His reflection flickers in the glass, small and pale, eyes wide, because he remembers this feeling. The silence before something bigger comes. Once, long ago, a storm came to nowhere. Not of wind or water, but of something else. Something cosmic. Something cruel. Something that could not be reasoned with. A tower of light. A voice like thunder. Eyes that saw through walls and minds. Courage had stood in its path. Shaking, growling, trying to be bigger than he was. But it hadn't noticed him. Not really. It swept past. Lifted the house from the ground. Tore the sky apart. And all he could do was hold Muriel's hand as tightly as he could. And wait. He had saved them. Eventually. But not by force. Not by fight. The storm simply left because it chose to. Not because he stopped it. Now at the window, Courage lowers his head onto his paws. He watches the wind press against the glass. There is no monster tonight. But the memory of helplessness sits with him. Not every danger could be faced. Not every evil could be stopped. Some things were too big, too strong, too far above a little dog's reach. He closes his eyes, wishes just for a moment that he had been something more. Someone who could have made the storm listen. Someone who could have changed everything. But he wasn't. He was only Courage. Small, trembling, trying his best. And even though the house is quiet, his heart still echoes with the sound of a sky that didn't hear him bark. The dream begins in silence. No wind, no color, no ground beneath his paws. Just fog, and light, and the soft sound of a clock, ticking somewhere far away. Courage stands in the center of nothing, alone. Then, a shape. Familiar. Warm. Muriel. She smiles. Soft, kind. The way she always does. And reaches toward him. He runs. The fog resists his legs like water. But he pushes through. He gets close. Close enough to feel her fingers brush his paw. And then, something pulls her back. Not fast. Not violent. But without care. Without mercy. A force. Vast. Invisible. Indifferent. A rip in the air. A pull from the sky. And Muriel, so small, so gentle, is lifted from the ground. Her hand still reaching for him. Her eyes wide. Not in fear, but in confusion. Why can't you stop this? Courage leaps. He tries to grab her, hold her, anchor her, do something. But his paws pass through empty air. The sky closes, and she is gone. The fog thickens. The light fades. Courage is alone again. He falls to the ground. Not with a sound. Just a slow, heavy drop. The weight of everything he couldn't stop pressing into his chest. He wakes with a twitch. Back in the farmhouse. The clock ticks softly. The night hums beyond the windows. Muriel's door is closed. She is safe. She is here. But the dream lingers. Not because it happened, but because it could. Because once something had come. Something unknowable. And taken her. Just for a moment. Just long enough for him to feel that hollow space between his paws. That place where she should have been. He pads quietly to her door. Lays beside it. Just to be near. Just in case. Because no matter how small he feels, he will never stop trying to stand between her and whatever waits beyond the fog. Even if he knows, he can't always win. Morning light slips into the farmhouse like a whisper. Pale, quiet, and slow. The curtains move gently. The dust drifts lazily in golden beams. The house is awake, but not bustling. Not yet. Courage sits on the floor beneath the kitchen table. His head rests on his paws. His tail doesn't wag. His eyes are heavy with thought. There's no immediate danger. Muriel is humming in the next room. Eustace is outside, pretending to fix the tractor. But Courage feels it again. The memory. A door. Thick. Heavy. Sealed with runes and locks. He didn't understand. Behind it Muriel. Trapped. Not screaming. Not panicking. Just waiting patiently. Trusting that Courage would come. He had tried everything. Clawed at the hinges. Pushed with all his strength. Searched every inch of the room for keys. Levers. Buttons. Time passed too fast. Every second a weight pressing harder on his chest. He barked. He cried. He begged. But the door stayed shut. He wasn't strong enough. Wasn't clever enough. And in that moment, he wasn't enough. He had found a way eventually. Of course he had. He always did. But the look on Muriel's face when the door finally opened. She had smiled. Like always. But her eyes, just for a second, had held a flicker of worry. Not for herself, but for him. Now, under the kitchen table, Courage blinks slowly. He looks toward the pantry door. Not locked. Not magical. Not dangerous. Just a door. But still his heart beats faster. Because some doors never leave you. Some locks live forever in your chest. Muriel steps into the kitchen. She sees him under the table. Smiles softly. Places a saucer of milk near his paws. She doesn't ask why he's there. She never does. She just hums. And keeps him company. Courage lifts his head. Drinks slowly. The door stays closed. The house stays quiet. But deep inside, he remembers. The door that didn't listen. The wall he couldn't break. And the love that waited behind it anyway. The prairie is still. The sky above nowhere is wide and empty. Not stormy. Not soft. Just blank. Colorless. Expressionless. Like the face of something far too big to notice what walks below it. Courage stands in the front yard. The wind brushes past his fur. The grass sways gently, but he feels no comfort from it. Only distance. His eyes lift toward the horizon, where earth meets sky like a thin trembling line. And somewhere beyond that, he knows the world continues. Farther than he can see, wider than he can imagine. He remembers a day, one not unlike this, when something massive came to nowhere. Not evil, not angry, just unbothered. A giant machine, a roaming void, a visitor from the stars who didn't see homes, only land, didn't see families, only terrain, didn't see courage at all. He had barked, he had jumped, flashed lights, waved signs, drawn pictures, thrown himself in the path, and still, it rolled on. It didn't hate him, it didn't even notice him. That was worse. Muriel had been inside when it came. He had rushed in, grabbed her, pulled her to safety just in time. The house trembled, creaked, parts of the porch still bear the scars. But they lived, because of him. And yet, the feeling remained, that there are forces out there too large to hear a scream, too far to care if something breaks. And sometimes, all a little dog can do, is stand in their shadow and hope the world looks down. Now standing in the yard, courage closes his eyes. He feels the vastness of everything above and around him. The size of the sky, the stretch of the land, the quiet indifference of the air. And still he stays, not because he believes he can stop it, but because if something ever comes again, he'll still be there. Still bark, still try, still love, even when the world doesn't care. Behind him the screen door creaks open. Muriel steps onto the porch. She calls softly, not in worry, just in rhythm. Courage turns, walks to her. She scratches behind his ears. She says nothing else, and they sit together, watching. The world spins on, unaware, but courage remains. The wind rises again, not sharply, not wildly, but steadily, like a breath too big to hold. The farmhouse shutters rattle gently. The curtains lift, and courage feels it before he hears it. Sound low, endless, layered like waves crashing inside one another. Not a voice, not a scream, but command. Something speaking, from everywhere, and through everything. It's just a memory now, but it returns like thunder. He had been in the hallway, trying to bark, trying to warn Muriel, who stood transfixed by the radio, by the lights, by the whispers that weren't whispers. A signal had come through, from somewhere far, far beyond the stars. It spoke in words no one understood, except Muriel, except Eustace, except everyone but him. They moved like sleepwalkers, listened with eyes wide, and when he barked, no one heard him. Not because he was too soft, but because the voice was louder, deeper. He had tried, jumped in front of the screen, pulled the plug, covered Muriel's ears, tried to write, draw, scream, cry, but the voice drowned it all. Drowned him. He remembers how it felt, not like fear, but like vanishing, as if the world was choosing not to hear him anymore, and he was fading into silence. Now in the living room, the radio sits quiet. A soft tune plays, a polka Muriel likes. Courage lies beside it, tail curled around his body, eyes half closed, but the feeling is still there. That strange ache in his chest, that deep memory of being unheard. He glances at the window, then at the ceiling, then back at the old radio dial. There are forces out there, Voices that drown. Signals that twist the world. And sometimes, courage can't speak loud enough. But even in those moments, he stays. He fights. He reaches for Muriel. Even when she can't hear him. Even when he's already vanishing. Because he believes that love, even quiet, even unheard, still matters. Muriel walks past. She turns the radio off with a gentle twist, smiles at him, and keeps walking. He watches her go, and feels a little more visible, a little more heard, just enough. Dawn unfolds across the sky. Slow, gentle, not a burst of light, but a long exhale. Clouds drift like feathers over the flat lands of nowhere. The wind has softened, and the shadows of the night have pulled away. Inside the farmhouse, the world begins to stir. The tea kettle murmurs faintly. Floorboards creak under Muriel's slippers. The house is waking, and so is courage. He sits by the front door, not guarding, not trembling, just watching. His eyes carry the weight of many nights, many storms, many things he couldn't stop, but also the warmth of morning, the silence of calm, the steady rhythm of home. He remembers everything, the towering monsters, the voices from space, the doors he couldn't open. He remembers how small he felt, how loud the world was, how fast it all moved past him, and how powerless he truly was. But he also remembers this. He never ran. He never gave up. Even when his bark was too quiet, even when the world didn't see him, he stayed. Because love doesn't always win with strength. Sometimes it just stays, even when it's afraid, even when it's helpless, even when it's helpless, even when it knows it might lose. Behind him, Muriel enters the room. She carries his favorite blanket, the one with the faded stars, and the loose thread at the corner. She lays it beside him, sits with him, not to speak, not to ask, just to be. Courage crawls into her lap, tucks himself in, closes his eyes. The weight is still there, the memory of being powerless. But now, there's peace too, because he understands something now. Power isn't always the bark, or the strength, or the victory. Sometimes, power is just choosing to stay. The morning light spills through the window, warm and wide, and courage sleeps, not because the world is safe, but because in this moment, they are together, and that is enough. The night is quiet and nowhere. Not heavy, not haunted, just still. The wind moves gently across the open fields, brushing the grass like fingers across old pages. Inside the farmhouse, the lights are low. The old clock ticks in the hallway, steady and slow. Muriel sleeps in her chair, book open in her lap. Courage sits at the edge of the room, near the base of the stairs, watching, waiting, thinking. His eyes drift toward the worn armchair near the television. Empty now, but not forgotten. Eustace's hat still rests on the cushion, tilted forward like a face trying to hide. Courage stares at it, and thinks of all the words that were never said. The ones that could have softened something, the ones that might have mattered. He closes his eyes, and the memory begins. It's not one moment, it's many. 100 little stings, the shouting, the stomping, the mocking laugh, the slam of the door. Always the same rhythm, always the same cold. And courage never fought back, not with anger, not with words. He flinched, he barked, he ran, he stayed, but he never found a way in. The dream sharpens. Eustace, alone on the porch, arms crossed, hat pulled low, muttering into the dark. Courage sitting by the screen door, just watching, wishing, even then, that he could say something that would reach through the layers. The mask, the grumbles, the old wounds. But he never could. Now, in the real house, the wind rattles the shutters gently. The hat doesn't move. It just sits there, still, like the man who wore it. Courage walks over, places a paw on the seat, and lowers his head beside it. Not in fear, not in anger, but in quiet apology. He never stopped Eustace from being mean. He never softened him, never reached whatever was buried beneath the hat and the boots and the cold eyes. And part of him always wished he had. Even once. The clock ticks. Muriel shifts in her sleep, and Courage stays curled beside the empty chair, listening to the silence Eustace left behind. The dream begins with a hallway. Long, dusty, familiar. The wallpaper peels at the edges. The light bulb flickers above. And somewhere at the end of it, Courage sees him. Eustace, hat low, back turned, silent. Courage pads slowly down the hall, each step muffled, each breath cautious. He doesn't know what he hopes to find, but he keeps walking. As he gets closer, the hallway changes. Photos on the walls begin to shift. Not the ones he knows. Not Muriel smiling in the kitchen. Not the farmhouse in spring. These are different. A boy, alone, frowning beneath a crooked cap. A father, tall and shadowed. A hand raised, not in love. The field behind them, wide and silent. Courage stops, looks up at Eustace, who hasn't moved, still turned away, still unreachable. But now Courage understands something. There was kindness once, but it was buried, not lost, just never fed. The hallway trembles. Dust falls from the ceiling. The images begin to fade. Eustace turns slightly, not enough to see his eyes, but enough to hear a breath. A tired, quiet breath. Not angry, not cold, just tired. Courage tries to speak, to bark, to say I see it now. But the words don't form, and Eustace keeps walking. The dream unravels. The hallway stretches into nothing, and Courage wakes beneath the kitchen table. The early light has returned to the sky. Muriel hums somewhere in the house, and the armchair sits where it always does, empty but full of memory. Courage crawls out from beneath the table. He walks to the wall where an old photo hangs. Muriel and Eustace, a rare one, smiling, kind of. He stares at it, not with fear, but with ache, for the kindness he never found, and the man who never let himself be seen. The afternoon light rests gently on the farmhouse. Everything feels still, as if time itself has sat down for a moment. Courage lies in the hallway, just outside the bedroom door. The floor beneath him is warm from sunlight, but his mind drifts somewhere colder. He remembers the kitchen, the slam of the fridge door, the grumble of boots across the tile, the usual storm in a man's body, too used to anger. And Muriel, ever patient, ever soft, simply continuing, unmoved, but not untouched. And Courage watching, always watching, heart pounding, ears folded, wanting to do something, but knowing that words wouldn't change anything. Not in that moment, not in that house, not with Eustace. He remembers the silence afterward. Not peace, just the space where an apology should have been. The dream returns gently. Eustace stands at the kitchen sink, alone, hands clasped, staring at something on the counter. A teacup, half broken, the handle missing. Muriel isn't there. Courage watches from the hallway. Eustace mutters something too quiet to hear, then looks toward Courage, just once, eyes tired, older than before, and then he walks away. No words, no sorry, just the usual weight in his footsteps, and the teacup left behind. Courage wakes in the same hallway. The floor still warm, but his chest heavy, not from what happened, but from what didn't. No apology, no moment of softness, just that ache, long and hollow. He pads into the kitchen, finds Muriel humming softly to herself, setting a kettle to boil. She turns and smiles, and for a moment, he almost sees the dent in the old teacup still on the shelf. He doesn't bark, doesn't whimper. He just sits quietly at her feet, grateful she never needed the apology to keep loving, but still wishing she'd received one anyway. Evening settles slowly over nowhere. Not with a sunset, but a slow dimming, like someone gently turning the world down. The wind picks up just slightly, brushing the curtains and coaxing the screen door into its quiet, familiar creak. Courage sits on the porch, still, wrapped in his blanket, watching the prairie shift from gold to gray, and he thinks of Eustace. Not the shouting, not the boots, not the slams or the scowls, but the almosts, the flickers, the seconds where something softer nearly showed itself. The time he fixed Muriel's chair, and pretended he didn't. The time he gave Courage the last piece of toast, then grumbled like he meant nothing by it. The time he paused before yelling. The time he almost smiled. Small things, tiny glimpses, of the good inside. But never enough, never held on to. Courage remembers trying, so many times, drawing pictures to make him laugh, fetching his tools when he didn't ask, standing up to protect him even when he'd just been cruel, and waiting, always waiting, for that one real moment. A moment when Eustace might change, might soften, might say, "Thank you, I'm proud of you, I see you," but it never came, and maybe it never would have. The porch creaks. The wind carries the sound of the tractor rattling in the distance, rusted, broken, forgotten, a piece of Eustace that never really worked right. Just like the rest of him, Courage lowers his head, not in defeat, but in mourning, not for what Eustace was, but for the good that stayed locked inside him, and for Courage's quiet hope that he could have been the one to set it free. The stars begin to appear, one by one, and behind him, Muriel hums in the kitchen, a sound that feels like home, even when part of it was never warm. Courage stays on the porch, eyes wide, heart open, still hoping. Even now, the farmhouse is quiet, so quiet, it feels like time has stopped. No footsteps, no humming, no wind, just the ticking of the clock, and the long breath of a house holding too many memories. Courage sits in the living room. The chair across from him is empty. The hat is gone, tucked away somewhere, out of sight. But the silence still sits in its place. He thinks about all the days they shared the same room. Eustace reading the paper. Courage curled at Muriel's feet. So close, but so far. He remembers trying, sitting just a little closer, bringing him his glasses, holding up a drawing, just to share something simple. Sometimes Eustace would glance, sometimes he'd mutter, but most often, nothing. The silence between them wasn't angry. It was just there, unmovable, like an old wall built brick by brick, not out of hatred, but habit. Courage wonders, if he had tried harder, if he had barked less, and spoken more, would it have changed anything? Could he have cracked the silence? But now, the question doesn't come with panic, only sadness, because the time has passed, and the space between them was never crossed. Still, Courage walks to the chair, stares at it, then gently climbs up onto the cushion, circles once, and lies down. The chair creaks softly, but it does not protest. It does not speak. It only holds him. And for a moment, that's enough. In the kitchen, Muriel hums faintly, unaware of the quiet ache just a room away. And outside, the wind begins to stir again, soft and low. Courage rests in the silence, not to erase it, not to change it, but to sit with it, to say without words, "I tried." Morning rises slowly over nowhere. The sky glows with pale gold. The wind brushes against the windows. The house creaks as it breathes in a new day. Inside, the air is still, not heavy, not sad, just full, of memory, of silence, of everything left unsaid. Courage sits at the foot of the bed. Muriel is still asleep, a blanket drawn to her chin. The room glows with soft morning light. The hallway is quiet. The chair in the living room remains empty. And Courage knows it will stay that way. He walks through the house, room by room, touching things without touching them. The radio, the back door, the old slippers near the mat, the tool belt still hanging by a single nail. Everything carries the shape of Eustace, even in his absence. And Courage remembers the weight he once carried. The fear, the flinching, the confusion of loving someone who never said it back. But today, that weight feels different. Not gone, but not sharp. just present, like a stone smoothed over time. He walks to the coat rack, reaches up, and gently pulls Eustace's hat down. It's stiff, worn, dusty. He places it on the armchair, carefully, deliberately, then steps back, and sits, watching it, not waiting for it to move, just being near. Because even after all the yelling, the name-calling, the scaring, the growling, Courage never stopped loving him. He didn't know why. He didn't need to. Some things are simply true, even when they hurt. Muriel enters the room, slow and soft, her eyes full of sleep. She sees the hat, sees Courage sitting in front of it. She doesn't speak. She just places a gentle hand on his head. They stand there together, quiet, still, holding all the years between them. Courage closes his eyes. The house breathes around them. The silence remains. But now, it feels less lonely. Because even if nothing changed, even if the wall stayed, even if the apology never came, he loved him anyway. And that love, unreturned, unspoken, was still real, still brave, still his. The wind wanders over the plains of nowhere. Not rushing, not howling, just searching. It brushes softly across the farmhouse windows, curling under the porch and around the chimney like it's looking for something it once knew. Inside, Courage sits near the front door, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The sky is quiet. The fields are wide, but something in his chest feels narrow, tight, like a thread being gently pulled. The house is calm tonight. Muriel has fallen asleep in her rocker. Eustace snores softly from the bedroom. The kettle has long since cooled, yet Courage stays awake. Still, heavy with memory. In his paws, he holds a faded scrap of cloth, soft, frayed at the edges, a corner of something long gone. Something that once smelled like sawdust and lavender and warm fur. He doesn't know how it survived. Maybe it was caught in his fur. Maybe the wind brought it back. Maybe it never left him. But when he holds it, the memory returns. Not clearly, not fully, just flashes. A small wooden floor, a patch of sunlight near a bowl, a gentle voice humming in a language he barely remembers, and two larger shapes. Warm and safe, his real home, his first home, the one he never saw again. The dream creeps in. He's small again, tiny paws on linoleum, a ball rolling under a cabinet, soft barks echoing off painted walls. Then, a door opening, a gloved hand, a cage, a rocket, the stars, and silence. When he wakes, he's still by the door, the cloth still in his paws, the house still holding him. But the ache inside his chest has curled up tighter, like a dog that never found its blanket again. He walks across the room, places the cloth gently in a box beneath the couch, and climbs onto the windowsill. From there he watches the wind moving across the plains, as if it too is looking for a home it can't quite remember. The dream begins with footsteps, soft, rapid, uneven, like a young heart chasing something it trusts. Courage runs down a hallway. He's smaller here, lighter. Before fear had a shape, before loss had a sound. The walls around him are warm, pale blue, maybe yellow. The dream won't decide. He turns corners that feel familiar, hears voices that don't speak words, but hum gently from behind closed doors. He smells something baking, and it makes his tail wag. He runs to the end of the hall. A door waits there, slightly ajar, light spilling out from underneath. He reaches it, places his paw on the wood, pushes. But it doesn't move. The hallway behind him fades. The smell disappears. The hum stops. Only the door remains. He pushes again, harder. It doesn't open, doesn't budge, doesn't see him. Then, shadow behind him, tall, sharp, mechanical, a gloved hand, a cage. The door vanishes, and Courage is left on the floor, alone, staring up at something far too big to stop. He wakes beneath the window again. The sky outside is beginning to shift, night inching away from the horizon. But the weight of the dream remains. The door, the one he didn't reach in time, the one that never opened again. He wanders through the quiet house, His paws make soft taps on the wooden floor. Every door here opens. Every corner has a name. But still, it's not that home. Not the one with the song in the walls. Not the one that vanished too soon. He finds Muriel's slippers by the fire. He curls beside them and rests his head on her woolly sock. Her scent is warm, present, real, but deep inside, there's still a tiny paw pressed against a door that won't move. The wind moves gently through the fields of nowhere. It carries the scent of dust and distant rain. And beneath that, something else, something older. A smell courage can't quite name, but his body remembers. It pulls him from the house,
across the yard, and out into the open.
He walks for hours, not with urgency, but with longing. Each step feels like a question. Is it here? Is it close? Will I know it when I find it? He passes the old barn, the dry well, the curve of the fence that always catches the wind just right. Places he's seen 1,000 times, but today they feel different. They almost feel right. He lies beneath the tree behind the field, where the grass grows softer and the sky looks taller. He closes his eyes. For a moment the breeze shifts. The branches above sway in a pattern that hums. And for a flicker of time, he thinks maybe this is it. The home he lost. The one he couldn't keep. The feeling he's been chasing in every corner of the world. But then a crow calls. The clouds move. And the hum fades. It isn't the place. Not really. Just another almost. Another soft shape that almost fits the hole inside him. He gets up. Walks back. Not sad. Just quiet. The farmhouse appears on the horizon. Familiar. Solid. Warm in a way that almost feels like home. But not quite. Not fully. Muriel is on the porch, brushing crumbs from her apron. She sees him and smiles. He walks to her. She holds the door open without a word. And he enters. Not because it's the home he lost, but because it's the one that waited. He curls on the rug. The wind presses against the windows, and courage closes his eyes, still searching, but no longer lost. Night stretches over nowhere, like a quiet promise. The sky is deep and endless, too vast to hold,
too far to understand.
Courage lies in the field behind the farmhouse. The grass bends gently beneath him. The wind moves softly above, and the stars blink down without urgency. He watches them, eyes wide, breath slow, waiting for something, anything. He remembers the rocket, the one that rose into the sky, carrying everything he once knew. The cold hum of engines, the steel walls, the two shadows looking out through the glass. He'd watched them vanish into the stars, and ever since, he's been staring up. At first it was hope, that somehow, they'd come back, that maybe, he'd find them, that some light in the sky would blink in a pattern he understood. But as years passed, the stars stopped being answers, and became reminders, of distance, of silence, of the space between what was and what is. He lets out a breath, not a bark, just air, and the sky doesn't change. He closes his eyes, and dreams. In the dream, the stars shimmer more brightly. They move in slow spirals. One lowers itself. Not a ship, not a light, but a memory. His mother's scent, his father's shadow, a hallway without fear, a bowl of food on a patterned rug. He reaches toward it, but the memory pulls away, not cruelly, just softly, like everything else. He wakes in the field. The sky is still wide, still blinking, still unanswered. But courage doesn't cry. He doesn't howl. He just watches, and thinks maybe home isn't up there anymore. Maybe it never was. He stands, walks slowly back toward the house, each paw print a quiet echo behind him. The farmhouse glows faintly in the dark. And for tonight, it's enough. The farmhouse is quiet again. The kind of quiet that wraps around you. Not heavy. Not sad. Just there, like an old blanket. Courage lies beneath the bed, not hiding, just remembering. There's something folded in the far corner of the floorboards, something he hasn't touched in a long time. He crawls toward it slowly, pulls it free. A blanket, tattered, faded, too small for him now. But the scent is still there, dust and warmth, and something that smells like the time before fear. He lies down and buries his nose in it, and the memories come back, not as pictures, but as feeling. The sound of a lullaby from another room, the warmth of being cradled without needing to ask, the sense of belonging without needing to earn it. This blanket once lived in his real home, The one with the voices he barely remembers. The home where he was just a puppy with a name that was spoken gently. Where no monsters came. Where no rocket waited. Where love wasn't something to protect. It just was. He wraps himself in it. Or tries to. It's too small now. It doesn't quite cover his back. His legs poke out. But the feeling still fits. The floor creaks above him. Muriel moves through the room. Courage stays hidden. Not out of fear, but out of tenderness. As if this memory is too soft to share right now. He closes his eyes, letting the scent carry him, letting the warmth hold him, letting the past wrap around the parts of him that still feel too small. Because sometimes, home isn't a place you find again. Sometimes, it's a feeling you carry in pieces, in corners, in old cloth, in the way you curl when you sleep. He drifts off beneath the bed, wrapped in something too small, but never forgotten. Morning settles into nowhere. Like a soft promise, no big sunrise, no sharp color, just a slow warming of the walls, a slow stirring of spoons and cups, a quiet rustle of slippers across the floor. The farmhouse breathes, and Courage wakes. He's still beneath the bed, the little blanket still tucked around him, smaller than it used to be, but somehow, it still feels right. He crawls out slowly, pads across the room, and sits at the window. Outside, the wind brushes over the fields, the sky stretches wide, and the world, in its vastness, no longer feels like it's missing something. He knows now he won't find the home he lost, not in a field, not in a star, not even in a dream. But something else has grown around him, something quiet, and patched together, and real. A home he didn't find, but made. He thinks of Muriel. Her steady hand. Her warm lap. Her voice like tea and sunlight. He thinks of Eustace. Even his roughness was part of the shape of this place. He thinks of the blanket, the chair, the porch, the corner of the rug he always curls into when it rains. This house didn't come from the past. It came from every time he chose to stay. Every time he barked, and cried, and shook, and stayed anyway. Courage rises, walks to Muriel. She's humming over the stove. She looks down at him and smiles. No words, no need. He curls at her feet, closes his eyes, and lets the warmth of this home, the one he built with every trembling act of love, settle over him. Outside, the wind carries no questions today. Just soft air, and light. He didn't find his first home again, but he built one anyway. The night is soft over nowhere. The sky glows faintly with stars that blink like tired eyes. The wind moves gently through the fields, stirring the curtains, whispering across the roof like an old lullaby. Inside the farmhouse, Courage sits alone in the living room. Muriel sleeps in her chair. Eustace snores from the bedroom. The lamp hums quietly beside the couch, and Courage watches the shadows. Not with fear, but with memory. Tonight he's not thinking of monsters, not of claws or curses, or voices in the dark. He's thinking of a mask, white, blank, crying black tears. He remembers how it made him flinch, how it followed him, stared at him, chased him. He remembers his own panic, his attempts to protect Muriel, to run, to hide. But he didn't understand. Not then. Not until it was too late. The mask had never been angry. It had been grieving. It hadn't come to hurt. It had come to be seen. To ask, without words, why did you take her from me? And Courage had only seen the fear, not the pain. Now, years later, he sees it clearly. In the way the mask trembled, in the way it never struck, in the way it backed away when the truth was spoken. Courage curls into the rug. The flickering lamp casts soft shapes on the wall, and he thinks of all the others who came to nowhere, not to destroy, but to cry. He hadn't known, but he wishes he had. A soft breeze slips through the open window, and for a moment the flicker of that mask seems to appear in the shadow on the wall. Not chasing, not glaring, just standing, watching, and quietly forgiven. Courage closes his eyes, and lets the silence hold the memory. The dream begins in a hallway, not of the farmhouse, but of a place built from memory. The wallpaper changes with every step, old, new, strange, familiar. Courage walks slowly, Paul steps silent on the shifting floor. He passes doors, each one marked with a name he doesn't say out loud. A barber's laugh behind one. A cat's whisper behind another. A shadowy grin behind the third. He knows these doors. He knows who waits behind them. He walks past unsure if he wants to open them. But the doors open anyway. The wind is slow tonight, dragging across the desert like a tired breath. Rushing over fences, slipping through cracked windows. In the farmhouse, all is still. Muriel hums in her sleep. Eustace snores rise and fall like distant thunder. The moonlight casts a gentle glow on the wooden floor. And Courage sits in the hallway, alone. Awake, remembering. Not a moment. Not a nightmare. But a pattern. The way they always left. The enemies. The villains. The ones who scared and clawed and raged. They just disappeared. One moment terrifying. The next gone. Sometimes defeated. Sometimes banished. Sometimes changed. But never followed. Never comforted. Never healed. Courage thinks of each one now. Not as they appeared, but as they vanished. How no one watched them go. How no one asked if they were okay. How no one tried to stay with them after the danger passed. Not even him. He remembers the frozen field where one enemy was swallowed by their own sadness. He remembers the dark road where another limped away into fog. He remembers the clock tower, the mirror, the moving train, all the places he turned his back. Not out of cruelty, but relief, because it was over. But it never really was. Not for them. Courage presses his paw to the floor. It's warm with the memory of footsteps that walked away without goodbye. He curls up there, eyes wide, breath slow, letting the sorrow settle. Not for what he did, but for what he didn't do. Outside, the wind carries dust across the empty road, and Courage whispers nothing into the silence, because there are no words, only the ache of vanishing footsteps. It's morning now. The sun peeks gently through the curtains, tracing golden stripes across the rug. The house begins to stir. The kettle hums. The clock ticks. Muriel whispers softly in her sleep. But Courage doesn't move. He lies beneath the table, still, thinking. He remembers how stories used to end. The enemy retreats. The day is saved. The house is quiet again. Everything goes back to normal. But what is normal? For the ones who lost. For the ones who ran. For the ones who only ever wanted something no one could give. Courage thinks of Benton Tarantella, the filmmaker. He wasn't evil, just desperate. He'd lost his audience. And his friend. Courage scared him away. Sealed the door. Saved the day. But Benton never got his ending. Just silence. He thinks of LeQuack, the thieving duck. A liar. A trickster. But behind the false mustache and evil grin, wasn't there fear? Did anyone ever ask him why he lied so much? He remembers others. Those who lashed out. Who wanted control. Who stole. Shouted haunted. But who never got a moment to explain. Courage curls tighter on the rug. The day continues around him. Warm and slow. But inside, something stings. A question. A quiet, aching question. Could I have stayed? Just a moment longer. Would it have made a difference? He doesn't know. But the endings he once believed in now feel unfinished. Like closing a book before the final page. Muriel's footsteps tap gently on the floor. She walks past him humming. No monsters today. No danger. Just morning. But still, Courage lies there. Wishing some endings had been more than just escapes. Evening falls like a sigh. The sky turns purple, then ash, then blue-black. The wind curls softly around the house. The floorboards creak gently, as if stretching before sleep. Courage stands in the hallway, still, quiet, looking at the front door, and wondering. He's not remembering a specific face this time. Not a monster, not a scream. But a moment. That moment after the final scream fades. After the villain falters. After the threat ends. And they're just there, broken, lonely, staring at him, not as an enemy, but as someone who doesn't know where to go. He remembers walking away. He always did, because the job was done, because the danger had passed, because the story had ended. But what if he had stayed? What if he had sat beside them, held out a paw, waited for them to speak? What might they have said? Would Freaky Fred have talked about his sadness instead of his urges? Would cats have revealed the loneliness behind the grin? Would the shadows have softened? Would the crying have stopped? Courage presses his head to the door. It's cool. Still. The wind whispers on the other side. Not words, just longing. He doesn't know if they ever waited for him to return. But he knows this. He didn't try. And that sits heavy. Not like guilt, but like sorrow. A sorrow that doesn't need to be punished. Just understood. Courage turns from the door. Walks to the kitchen. Finds Muriel's slippers. Curls beside them. Because even if he can't go back, he can stay now. He can learn to wait. To listen. To not leave too soon. Night has fully settled over nowhere. The stars flicker softly. Not as watchers, but as distant hearts still beating somewhere far off. Inside the farmhouse, the only light comes from the soft blue glow of the television. Left on with no sound, Courage lies in front of it. Not watching, just remembering. He thinks of the word monster. It was used so often, to describe what was strange, what was scary, what didn't belong. But the more he thinks about them, the more human they seem. The mummy who just wanted peace for a lost love. The spirit in the violin, who longed for the music to return. The sand whale whose sorrow filled the dunes with trembling sighs. They weren't born cruel. They were changed by pain, by time, by something Courage never got to see. He pictures them now, not in their final scenes, but in the moments before they were called monsters, before they were feared, when they were just people, dreaming, hoping, losing, aching. He wonders if they missed being seen as more than what they became. If they even remembered how to ask for help. Or if they'd been hurting so long, all they could do was lash out. Courage shifts under the blue TV light. The room is quiet, but full. Not with ghosts, not with threats, but with understanding. Soft and slow, like fog lifting from an old photograph. He closes his eyes, and sees not fangs, or claws, or haunting shadows, but faces. Faces behind the masks. Souls behind the scares. Wounds behind the growls. And for the first time, he doesn't flinch at the memory. He listens. He sees. And he lets them be human again. The farmhouse is asleep. Muriel rests peacefully. Her soft snores like tiny waves. Eustace's hat rests on the back of the chair. Still, unbothered. The fire has dimmed to embers, and Courage sits alone near the stairs. Awake, heavy. Tonight it isn't fear that keeps him from sleep. It's memory, not the kind that startles, but the kind that aches. He remembers all the times he could have said something. A bark, a nudge, a pause that meant I see you. But he didn't. He was always so focused on protecting. He forgot to connect. He pictures the scene. The villain, hunched, defeated, looking not angry, but hollow. And him, turning away, leading Muriel to safety, shutting the door, letting the silence fill the space behind him. What if he'd reached out? A paw, a look, a moment of softness. Would it have changed anything? Would they have stayed? Would they have healed? Would they have known they weren't alone? Courage presses his paw to his chest. It feels like a heartbeat, but also like a door. One he could have opened for them, but never. He knows now. It's not always about saving someone. Sometimes it's about staying with them. Not because you can fix them, but because no one else ever did. The wind picks up outside. It rattles the window softly, not in warning, just in rhythm. A reminder that time moves on, but regret sometimes lingers. Courage walks to the window. He doesn't look for danger. He looks for those he left behind. The ones who never got a hand to hold. A voice to hear. A reason to believe they could still be more than what hurt them. He places his paw on the glass, and stays there for a while, silent, reaching, even if no one reaches back. Morning comes without sound. The light seeps through the farmhouse windows like honey, thick, golden, gentle. It doesn't wake the house all at once. It lets the walls stretch, the floorboards sigh. The dust floats softly in its path. Courage is already awake, sitting by the door, watching, not for danger, not for storms, but for someone, anyone, a visitor perhaps, old or new, kind or cruel, monster or memory. He doesn't expect it, but he hopes, because something in him has changed. He no longer thinks of enemies. He thinks of pain, of misunderstanding, of silence, of masks worn too long, and the truth behind them. He remembers what he didn't say, didn't do, didn't offer, but he forgives himself, because now he's ready. If one ever returns, with fangs that hide fear, with eyes that beg to be seen, with a voice that cracks beneath the growl, he won't run, he won't bark, he won't just protect Muriel. He'll stay, he'll sit, he'll listen, and maybe, just maybe, they'll sit too. Not all stories have to end in vanishing. Some can end in healing, even if it comes quietly, even if it takes time. The light moves across the floor. Muriel stirs in the next room. Courage smiles gently. He rises, stretches, and leaves the door unlocked, not because he's waiting for trouble, but because someone out there might be looking for a place to be understood. And this time, he'll be ready. The sky over nowhere is a deep, gentle violet. Evening has arrived, not with noise but with hush, the kind that sinks into the bones. Inside the farmhouse, all is still. The clock ticks softly, a curtain flutters, and Courage sits beside Muriel's chair. She is asleep, glasses tilted, crochet work resting in her lap. Her breath is steady, kind. Her smile lingers, even in sleep, and Courage watches her. There's so much he wants to say, but his voice never comes out right. A bark, a whimper, a stretch of sound that doesn't carry the truth he feels. He tries sometimes to howl with meaning, to speak without words, but she only pats his head, says, there, and moves on. She doesn't know. She doesn't hear it. Not really. How could she? He remembers all the times he wanted to say it. When she fed him, when she tucked him in, when she sang lullabies over boiling pots, when he ran through fire to save her, fought shadows, swam through terror. Each time, he wanted to say it. You are my world, but he never did. The wind howls across the desert, high and sharp like the sky itself is shivering. The farmhouse creaks. The weather vane spins. Loose boards rattle. Inside all is calm, but Courage can feel it. He sits by the window, eyes wide, ears back. The storm isn't here yet, but it's coming, and with it that familiar feeling, the one he never says aloud. He looks at his paws. So small, so soft. Then up at the sky, so large, so endless. And he wonders, what can I even do? He remembers the others, the monsters, the villains, the impossible things that towered above him. He's faced them all, but tonight the doubt is louder than the wind. Muriel sleeps in her chair, peaceful, safe, because of him. But he doesn't feel heroic. Not tonight. He curls into the corner near the door. The shadows stretch. The clock ticks. The storm moves closer. And deep inside his chest, that old ache returns. I'm just a dog. Why does this world always ask me to be more? Why am I the one who has to save it? He presses his face to the floor. Not hiding. Just trying to be small enough to disappear. But he can't. He never can. The world always needs something. And somehow, it always turns to him. He's tired. Not of love. Not of Muriel. But of carrying everything on such tiny shoulders. The storm arrives. The window rattles. But Courage doesn't move. He lies still. eyes open, heart heavy. Outside the wind screams, but inside the quiet speaks louder. Maybe I was never meant to be a hero. The storm has passed, but the wind still lingers, brushing through the grass like ghost fingers. The farmhouse sits in silence, wrapped in dew. Clouds drift slowly overhead, gray and tired. Inside, Courage stands on a stool near the sink. The dishes are too tall, the cabinet too high, the world too big. He tries to push a plate into the rack. It slips, clatters. He flinches, watches it wobble, then settle, unbroken, but loud enough to make his ears droop. He climbs down slowly, back to the floor, back to where he always feels. He pads through the house, past the tall coat rack, past the heavy door, past the mirror that shows a creature with wide eyes and trembling paws. And the thought returns, how am I supposed to protect anything? The world always felt too big, not just in size, but in sorrow, in danger, in pain. So many things he couldn't fix, so many cries he couldn't stop. He remembers the ones he didn't save in time, the ones who slipped through his paws, the ones who hurt Muriel before he could help. Not because he didn't try, but because he's just a dog, a small dog, in a world filled with shadows taller than trees. He lies in Muriel's rocking chair now. It sways gently beneath his weight. The sunlight through the window touches his fur, but his eyes are far away, thinking of every moment he failed, every second he froze, every time he wished he were someone else. Bigger, faster, stronger, more like a real hero. Not someone who shakes in fear, not someone who hides under beds, not someone who cries when no one's looking. He curls into the chair, lets the day pass without moving, and wonders not for the first time, was I ever enough for this world? The day drifts by in golden silence. Shadows stretch across the farmhouse floor. The dust dances in lazy circles, and Courage lies in the middle of it all. Still, listening, to the creaks in the wall, to the soft rustle of wind, to the steady hum of nowhere. He isn't hiding now. He's remembering, not the monsters, not the fear, but something smaller, something warmer. Love. Not the loud kind, not the heroic kind, but the kind that lives in the little things. In the way he brings Muriel her slippers, in the way he stands between her and the world, in the way he waits, watches, follows, protects. Again and again, he never had strength like the monsters, never had the words, the weapons, the answers. All he ever had was love, and he gave it, didn't he? All of it. Every bit. Without condition. Without pause. Without reward. He didn't save the world with muscles or magic. He saved it with loyalty, with tears, with trembling paws that still stood firm. Maybe he wasn't a hero, like in the stories. Maybe he wasn't built for victory, but he was built for care, for hope, for devotion. He closes his eyes now, listens to Muriel in the kitchen, humming, happy, safe, because of him, because even when the world was too big, his love never was. And suddenly, that feels like enough. Maybe the greatest hero isn't the one who wins, but the one who loves through everything. Dusk settles over nowhere. The sky glows dim orange, then lilac, then deep blue. The house creaks gently as it cools. The lights flicker on one by one, and Courage moves through each room, checking. The door is locked. The windows are closed. The faucet is off. Muriel's slippers are where she left them. Her rocking chair is waiting. The kettle murmurs on the stove. This house is held together by old nails, dry wood, and one very tired little dog. Not by design, not because anyone asked him to, but because he stayed. Even when he was scared, especially then. He remembers the times the house was falling apart, when vines crept through the floor, when wind howled through shattered glass, when monsters clawed at the walls. Muriel never saw it all. Because courage kept it from her. He patched things, mended what he could, stood between chaos and the kitchen table. He was just a dog, but in 100 unseen ways. He was the glue, the thread, the beam no one noticed. The house is quiet now, safe, warm, and courage sits on the rug. Not proud, not seeking praise. Just, still. The cracks in the walls don't bother him anymore. They remind him of every time he held this place together. Not with strength, but with love. With presence. With staying. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just keep the lights on. Keep the doors shut. The slippers warm. The tea ready. And even if no one ever says it, this house stands because of him. The moon rises over nowhere. Full. Glowing. Calm. It bathes the fields in silver. Paints shadows across the porch. Fills the house with quiet light. Courage sits at the edge of Muriel's bed. She sleeps peacefully beneath a quilt he pulled up for her. Her breathing is steady. Her hand rests gently on the pillow beside her. He watches her for a while. Not because he expects something to go wrong, but because she matters. Because every breath she takes makes his world feel whole. And then he looks at himself. His pause. His reflection in the glass. His hunched back. Tired from years of standing guard. And a thought rises. Not like a shout, but like a candle. A flicker. Soft. What if I was enough all along? Not because he defeated everything. Not because he was fearless. Not because he was perfect. But because he never gave up. He stayed. He showed up. Even when he was trembling. Shaking. Doubting. He chose to stand anyway. What more could anyone ask of a heart? He wasn't supposed to be a hero. He was supposed to love, to protect, to endure. And that quietly, fully, is exactly what he did. Maybe being just a dog was more than enough. Maybe it was everything. He settles beside Muriel now, tail tucked, eyes soft. The night wraps around them both like a blanket. And courage breathes. In a thought he never believed before. I did okay. The night is deep. Still. Silent. The wind has fallen quiet. The moonlight rests softly on the farmhouse floor. And courage lies in the center of it all. Breathing slowly. Eyes open. Awake with a peace he didn't have before. He doesn't feel big. He doesn't feel powerful. But he feels enough. Not because the world changed, but because something inside him did. He remembers the shadows, the screams, the impossible things he faced, the days he nearly broke, the nights he hid, and still found the strength to rise. He remembers every time he thought, I'm just a dog. And now he answers, gently, yes. And look what that dog did. He stood. He wept. He fought not to win, but to protect. And he did. He protected the one thing that ever mattered to him. Over and over again, Muriel stirs in her sleep, mumbles something soft. Courage is there beside her in an instant. Not courage of fear, not out of duty, but out of love. He curls against her side and lets his eyes close. The world still needs heroes, but maybe the ones we never see. The small, shaking, loving ones were the heroes all along. The wind picks up gently again. Not a howl, just a breeze. A hush through the fields. A soft reminder that morning is near. And in the farmhouse, a little dog sleeps. Heart full, body tired, soul at peace. Because tonight he finally knows. He was never just anything. He was always quietly, truly, enough. Night folds over nowhere like a blanket of stars. The wind hushes the tall grass. The moon rises slow, casting silver across the farmhouse roof. Inside all is quiet. Muriel is fast asleep, curled beneath her patchwork quilt. Eustace snores in his chair, hat tilted low. But courage is awake, still, watching. He lies at the foot of the bed, ears perked, eyes wide. Every creak, every whisper of wind. He hears it, not because danger is near, but because it might be. That's how it's always been. Every night for as long as he can remember. He never meant to stay awake forever. It just happened. One night became two, then a week, then a lifetime. Because what if something crept in while he slept? What if he missed it? What if Muriel needed him? So he waited, listened, watched shadows crawl across the walls, traced moonlight on the ceiling, held his breath when floorboards sighed. And while the rest of the world dreamed, he stood guard, not with pride, not for glory, but because his love was too big to let go, even for a moment. He remembers a night when the windows all shook, not from a monster, just thunder. Muriel stirred, frightened in her sleep. He didn't bark. He didn't cry. He climbed into her arms and stayed there till morning, then returned to the floor, still watching. Every night he gave away his rest, piece by piece, until all that remained was a trembling heart and heavy eyes. And now, the cost of it lingers, in his bones, in his breath, in the quiet ache of a soul that forgot how to sleep. Courage curls into the blanket's edge. The house is still, and somewhere deep inside, he wonders what it would feel like to truly let go, just for a night. Morning arrives quietly. Light slips in through the cracks in the curtains. The wind hums low and lazy through the fields. The floorboards stretch beneath soft footsteps. Muriel brews tea in the kitchen. Eustace flips a newspaper with a grunt. The day begins as it always does. But courage is tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. The kind that lives in the corners of the body. In the weight behind every blink. In the way his paws move slower than they used to. He lies in a patch of sunlight on the floor, half curled, half dreaming, but never fully gone. One eye always open. Even now, even when the room is safe, even when Muriel hums and nothing's wrong. One eye watches. Because that's what he's always done. He doesn't remember when it started, only that it never stopped. 1,000 dangers have passed through this house, and he met every one. With fear, yes, but also with courage. And afterward, when Muriel would rest, courage never did. He learned to drift in halves, one ear listening, one eye open, one paw ready to rise, always prepared, never still. The sun moves across the floor. The shadows stretch, then fade. Courage shifts positions, but doesn't close both eyes, not even for a moment, because somewhere deep inside, the question lingers. If I stop watching, who will protect her? But he doesn't ask it aloud, because even now, even weary, he believes the answer might still be him. So he watches, silently, lovingly, and never fully asleep. It is afternoon now. The sun has settled high in the sky. The wind is still. The land lies wide and waiting. Inside the house, Muriel naps peacefully in her chair. The radio plays soft static. A breeze stirs the lace curtains, and courage lies in the hallway, still, worn, drifting, but not asleep. His eyes are heavy. His limbs ache in ways that feel older than his years. His breath comes slow, not from calm, but from exhaustion. He's been like this before. The body cries out, please, rest. But the heart answers, not yet, not now. Because what if something changes? What if a shadow shifts, a door creaks, a noise he doesn't catch in time? He remembers the nights he nearly fell asleep, and the fear that jolted him back to waking. The dread of what might happen if he let go, even for one heartbeat too long. It's not just fear, it's love. The kind that makes you stay up through storms. The kind that breaks your own rules for the sake of someone else's peace. The kind that forgets its own needs. He rolls onto his side, stares at the ceiling, feels the pull of sleep behind his eyes. Warm and slow and kind, but doesn't give in. Not yet, because love has made him a guardian. And guardians don't sleep, even when the legs tremble, even when the eyelids flutter, even when the floor feels like a cloud beneath him. He stays, he watches, he endures. For her, the shadows begin to stretch, the day begins to fade, and courage is still there, heart wide open, body begging for rest, but the heart still whispering, Not yet. The sun begins to lower. The light shifts from gold to amber. Shadows stretch across the wooden floors. The world slows, just a little. Muriel hums in the kitchen. A pie cools on the windowsill. The farmhouse is warm, peaceful, safe, and courage sits beside the couch, watching. Still, there is a softness in the air, a lull, the kind of moment that gently calls you to lie down, to close your eyes, to give in. But courage doesn't move. He sees Muriel smile at the pie, wipe her hands on her apron, rock gently in her chair. All is calm, and still. He cannot let go. Not today, not yet. He remembers the spot by the window. The sun used to hit it just right. It was meant for naps, and once long ago, he tried. He curled up there, eyes heavy, the air warm and quiet, and just as he began to drift, the floor creaked. His ears perked. He rose, and never returned to that spot again. There was always something to chase, something to stop, something to watch, and the nap he almost took stayed unfinished. Now he stands beside that same spot. The light still finds it, still invites him, but he only watches. He imagines what it would feel like to lie there, to close both eyes, to let the world turn without him for just a little while, to believe even for one afternoon that everything would be okay without him. The pie cools, the house rests, and the nap still waits, but he doesn't take it, because the habit of giving everything leaves very little for yourself. He stays standing, still watching, still loving, still waiting for the day he finally lets go and lets himself rest. Evening settles in slowly. The sky fades to lavender. Crickets begin their quiet choir. The windows glow warm from within. Courage stands by the back door, looking out, listening, still awake, still on guard. The stars begin to appear, one by one, and in the hush between moments, a question stirs inside him, fragile, trembling. If I closed my eyes, would the world be okay? He doesn't know the answer. He's never tested it. Every storm he met it. Every shadow he chased it. Every whisper of danger, he followed it. Because it had always felt like the world would fall apart if he didn't hold it up. But what if that wasn't true? What if the world knew how to turn on its own? What if Muriel could be safe without him, just for a night? He watches her through the window. She's folding laundry, humming softly, pausing now and then to smile at nothing at all. She looks peaceful, more peaceful than he feels. He imagines walking to his bed, climbing in, pulling the blanket close, just letting go. Even for a little while, his body aches for it. His paws tremble. His heartbeat slows with the thought. But his mind still whispers, what if I'm needed? What if I miss something? It is so hard, so hard to stop being the protector, even when the danger is gone, even when no one's asking. But maybe the world can wait, just long enough for him to breathe, to sleep, to stop being the hero, and just be. Courage steps back from the door, turns toward his little bed in the corner. The blanket is soft, the pillow smells like sun, and for the first time in forever, he climbs in. The stars shimmer, the house holds its breath, and Courage closes his eyes. Just one, then the other, and the world does not fall apart. Evening settles in slowly. The sky fades to lavender. Crickets begin their quiet choir. The windows glow warm from within. Courage stands by the back door, looking out, listening. Still awake, still on guard. The stars begin to appear, one by one, and in the hush between moments, a question stirs inside him, fragile, trembling. If I closed my eyes, would the world be okay? He doesn't know the answer. He's never tested it. Every storm he met it. Every shadow he chased it. Every whisper of danger, he followed it. Because it had always felt like the world would fall apart if he didn't hold it up. But what if that wasn't true? What if the world knew how to turn on its own? What if Muriel could be safe without him, just for a night? He watches her through the window. She's folding laundry, humming softly, pausing now and then to smile at nothing at all. She looks peaceful, more peaceful than he feels. He imagines walking to his bed, climbing it, pulling the blanket close, just letting go, even for a little while. His body aches for it. His paws tremble. His heartbeat slows with the thought. But his mind still whispers, what if I'm needed? What if I miss something? It is so hard, so hard to stop being the protector, even when the danger is gone, even when no one's asking. But maybe the world can wait, just long enough for him to breathe, to sleep, to stop being the hero, and just be. Courage steps back from the door, turns toward his little bed in the corner. The blanket is soft, the pillow smells like sun, and for the first time in forever, he climbs it. The stars shimmer, the house holds its breath, and Courage closes his eyes. Just one, then the other, and the world does not fall apart. If you made it here, thank you for sitting with us through the quiet, through the ache, through the healing. Courage never asked to be a hero. He just loved, so deeply, so quietly, so endlessly, that it made him one. And maybe that's what real strength looks like. Not loud, not perfect, just present, just gentle, just there, when it matters most. If you've ever carried too much, stayed awake for others, forgotten how to rest yourself, this story was for you. You deserve to breathe, to pause, to be held, even by silence, even by this. If Courage could tell you one thing, maybe it would be this. You've done enough for today. You can let go now. You are loved. If this story made your heart a little softer tonight, leave A in the comments, so Courage knows he's not alone. And if you'd like to curl up with us again sometime, subscribe to join this cozy little family. We'll be here, quiet, kind, and waiting with more stories for hearts like yours. Good night.